Today we're taking a closer look at Adidas's latest answer to the Vaporfly and Alphafly from Nike, the Adizero Adios Pro 2. We'll look at what's new in this latest offering, how they feel at different paces and distances, and whether they offer a more affordable solution to the long-reigning king of carbon-plated shoes. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to The Vegan Runner. If you're new to the channel, I often review shoes and a whole range of running gear, as well as making race videos and a whole bunch of running related content. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Now before I go on, I'm still not a sponsored athlete, so I bought these shoes with my own money and nobody is paying me to make this review. Right, so let's get into this shoe then, the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 2. It's a bit of a mouthful, but then it's a whole lot of shoe. It's a neutral shoe, weighing in at just 212 grams in my size, which is UK 7.5, and it has a pretty high heel-to-toe drop of 10 millimeters. We've got plenty of Light Strike Pro cushioning in the midsole, a really interesting looking continental rubber outsole, and internally reinforced Mesh 2.0 upper, which promises to be breathable, flexible, and lightweight. Just to give this review a little context, I've had them now for just about over a month or so. I've put them through a range of different workouts and races, including an 18-minute 5K, a 10-mile tempo run, and a sub-3-hour marathon at Manchester. If you haven't seen that video yet, check it out after this one. Straight out of the box then, you're going to notice just how lightweight these shoes feel. There's something very special about strapping on a pair of lightweight racing shoes. If you train in a heavier shoe, which most people will do, putting on a lighter pair for race day just makes running feel that little bit easier and the leg turnover just effortless. So I was impressed with how light they felt out of the box, but interestingly I've just weighed my Alphaflys, which at least dimensionally are the kind of bulkier looking shoe with that massive wedge of foam and those air pods and that thick slab of rubber at the front, but the Alphaflys are actually 4 grams lighter. Now it's not a world of difference. I think you'd be hard pressed to feel the difference of 4 grams when they're on your feet, but it is surprising that a more minimalist looking shoe, it turns out to be slightly heavier. Regardless, it's still a super lightweight shoe, and whilst running at speed, it helps to add to that feeling of effortless running. Now onto what's probably the most interesting part of the Adios Pro lineup, which is how the carbon fibre is configured. In most super shoes across different brands, the carbon fibre plate runs pretty much the length and the width of the shoe, typically sandwiched between foam, and looks much like a padded insole. Adidas have taken this in a completely different direction. They're using 5 rods lined up to match your foot's anatomy, which Adidas say brings a lightweight stiffness and offers a more anatomical transition. Then you have another layer of foam and then a more traditionally shaped carbon plate, but only covering the heel. The rods are super futuristic looking, and you can catch a glimpse of them through a piece of exposed foam cut away at the bottom of the shoe. The idea that they're more anatomically aligned with the metatarsals appeals to me. Whether or not it makes much of an actual difference in terms of the ride is up for debate. But importantly, you can still feel that springy snap of a carbon plated shoe. You still feel like you're getting that little bit of extra bounce as your legs turn over. Compared to a typical carbon plate, they do feel slightly softer and a little bit more flexible, and not quite so stiff across the width of the shoe. I quite like that feeling. It just adds a touch more of natural foot motion and a little bit more to the ground feel as your foot hits the deck. In terms of the plate, to me this is the most comfortable feeling carbon fibre bounce from any of the shoes that I've tried over the years. The rods are innovative, and I think it's brave of Adidas to go in a different direction from the competition. Now, you tend to get the most out of the carbon plated shoes when running at speed, and I felt a much snappier return running sort of a 6-minute mile than an 8-minute mile for sure, and pretty much anything under a kind of 7-minute mile felt really snappy. At the slower end of my pace, they do feel quite clunky and a little unstable even. It's difficult to feel that plate working when you're just plodding along, but pick up the speed though and it soon kicks in and it delivers a very responsive and snappy ride. Now that brings me nicely onto the midsole, which, as I already mentioned, is made up of 2 layers of Lightstrike Pro 2. I've got to say it's a great foam, super light, well cushioned, and it takes out a lot of the firmness of the shoe, which I typically associate with other carbon or nylon plated shoes. Whilst running it feels super soft and responsive, it's a really comfortable ride, and even after 26.2 miles, the soles of my feet still felt good. Now, looking at the shoe, you wouldn't think the stack height comes anywhere close to the World Athletics guidelines, but at 39.5mm they're just half a millimetre under the limit, so they're a well stacked shoe. Like many of these shoes with a large stack height, they do feel pretty unstable when walking around in them. It does feel like you're kind of wearing marshmallow stilts when heading up to the start line and warming up. It's not until you get running that they begin to feel a lot more stable. That said, there isn't a whole lot of rigidity. Actually, there's barely any in the heel. Kind of see how flexible that is there. You know, there's barely anything in the heel to offer support. And that's typically where I need a little support, particularly when cornering. So just a word of caution with these shoes. I think it pays to strengthen your ankles and lower legs. If you're someone who has like weaker ankles or you're rehabbing some sort of lower leg injury, I would just use these shoes with caution. I've noticed in this slow motion footage when I'm running, my ankle collapses inward a lot more than they normally would. Again, this is more prominent at lower speeds. When I'm up on my toes and forefoot to midfoot striking, I don't see it as much, but with a bit more of a heel strike landing, you can see that instability a bit more. I don't think it's a huge problem. It certainly didn't affect how I felt during the marathon, but I think it's something to be aware of. So that takes us on to the upper, which Adidas call Celamesh 2.0 and is made of partially recycled polyester. It's slightly thinner than previous versions of Celamesh and it's supposed to be a little bit more breathable. I couldn't really tell the difference between the 2 versions if I'm honest, but I enjoy this upper. The lacing lockdown's good, it's roomy in the toe box and the heel feels comfortable against your Achilles. The material feels really durable and I really like the kind of like translucence. It just adds to the super sort of futuristic vibe of this shoe. Just a word on the lacing though, this has got to be one of the trickiest shoes to lace up that I've ever worn. It's not so much getting your foot into the shoe that's the issue, but adjusting the laces and tightening afterwards. I can't fathom why they're so difficult to adjust and change, but it's a real pain to sort it out. But fortunately, once you have got them on and dialed in, they stay that way. Over 26.2 miles, the laces didn't stretch or shift. My foot felt secure all the way around. The tongue is extremely thin, as you'd expect, and is attached to the upper, meaning it stays in place really well. As I mentioned already, the heel is very flexible and very minimally padded. There's just 4 very tiny cushion pads near the top of the heel, but it's more than enough to offer a comfortable ride. Another interesting part of the design of this shoe is the outsole. There's just a very thin strip of continental rubber perforated by small holes from the fore to the midfoot of the shoe, with a fair bit of exposed foam before getting to the 2 narrow strips of rubber either side of the heel. If you look really closely, you can see that the rubber is just ever so slightly texturized, and despite looking like it's going to be a very slick and slippery ride, I found it actually to be surprisingly grippy. I've worn it in both wet and dry conditions and it stuck to the road really well. It's difficult to tell how quickly it's going to wear, but as I approach the 50-mile mark, I can't see any noticeable worn out patches yet. I like that it's made from continental rubber. I'm pretty confident this part of the shoe is going to be plenty durable for the life of the shoe. I'm suspecting at least a few hundred miles from it. I'm really impressed with the outsole. Again, it's a bold new look, a step away from the competition, and a risky bit of innovation. At £180, this shoe is very competitively priced when compared with the Alphafly's £260 and the Vaporfly's at £230. You're getting a really similar shoe for up to £80 less. We're also seeing these shoes on the feet of more and more pros, with athletes taking podium positions in the world majors at Berlin, London and Boston wearing these shoes. Despite the lack of heel support and tricky lacing, I highly recommend the shoe. They do exactly the job they should, and I'd feel very confident putting them on my feet for any race where I'm looking to really push the pace. Hope you enjoyed the review. Again, if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button. And if you want to see how these shoes perform at marathon distance, then you can catch my mile-by-mile video of the Manchester Marathon here. Check out the links down below to find other ways of supporting and connecting with the channel, including getting your hands on one of these beauties. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, be the best you.